When Stephen A. Smith speaks your name on national television, the entire sports world listens. And when he turned his sights on Dillon Gabriel, it wasn't analysis. It wasn't debate. It was humiliation. A stripping down of a quarterback's image in front of millions, live and unedited. Stephen A. leaned into the camera with that familiar glare, the pause before the storm, and then the explosion. Dillon Gabriel, he barked. You're not just out of line, you're out of your depth. If you're into the real story and all the messy twists they don't show on highlight reels, go ahead and subscribe. And if you're sticking around to see how this Browns QB chaos plays out, you should definitely be subscribed. It wasn't said casually. It was said like a sentence being handed down in a courtroom. From there, it only got worse. He accused Gabriel of playing dirty games off the field because he couldn't win on it. He hammered the reports, the leaks, the whispers that had been flooding social media. He called them what everyone suspected they were, a desperate media campaign orchestrated by Gabriel's camp to chip away at Shedeur Sanders' momentum. And he wasn't done. Stephen A. didn't just raise his voice, he raised the stakes. That wasn't leadership, he thundered. That was sabotage. That was cowardice. The words hung in the air, sharp and unforgiving. It wasn't a hot take. It was an execution. He painted Gabriel not as a competitor fighting for a role, but as a man willing to tear down his teammate to climb a ladder he hadn't earned. The humiliation was total. He listed the facts, point by point, like evidence in a trial. Shedeur's completion rate in camp? Higher. His leadership in the locker room? Respected. His rapport with the offensive line and receivers? Unquestioned. And Dillon Gabriel? Nothing but noise, nothing but distraction, nothing but whispers pushed from the shadows. By the time Stephen A. was finished, the damage was done. The studio sat in stunned silence. The clip rocketed across social media, retweeted by NFL players, shared by reporters, dissected by coaches. The consensus was instant and brutal. Stephen A. hadn't just criticized Dillon Gabriel. He had buried him. For Gabriel, there was no way to spin it. No clever comeback to post. No burner account to defend himself. His name wasn't trending as a quarterback anymore. It was trending as a punchline, a cautionary tale. The guy who tried to manipulate the narrative and got torched for it live on ESPN. And that's the power of Stephen A. Smith. He doesn't just talk sports. He shapes reputations. He makes careers, or he ends them. And in this case, Dillon Gabriel didn't just walk away humiliated. He walked away branded. A quarterback who couldn't lead, a teammate who couldn't be trusted, and a player whose NFL future may have been torched in less than 5 minutes of television fury. One monologue, one humiliation, and Dillon Gabriel's career may never recover. Dillon Gabriel. Let me say this with my whole chest. You're not just out of line, you're out of your depth. What you pulled, that wasn't leadership. That was sabotage. That was cowardice. And that was just the opening line. What followed was a fiery research and absolutely devastating dismantling of Dillon Gabriel's actions. Stephen A. pulled the stats, the tape, the quotes, the facts. He laid it all out. Shedeur had a higher completion rate in camp. Shedeur had the backing of the offensive line and receiving core. Shedeur had zero negative press until Gabriel's team started pushing stories. And then he hit the crowd with the dagger. You want to start in this league? Try earning it, not leaking your way into the spotlight. Boom. Social media exploded. NFL players reposted the rant. Coaches silently nodded. Journalists dropped inside sources of their own confirming it. Gabriel's camp had been working angles behind closed doors for weeks. And just like that, the tide turned. Fast. Within days, the Browns front office made it official. Shedeur Sanders was QB1. And Dillon Gabriel? Traded. Shipped off to Carolina so quickly. People thought it was a joke at first. But the Browns weren't playing around. The leak campaign was a breach of trust. The team saw it for what it was. Toxic. Manipulative. Desperate. And the league? It took notes. Because for all the player empowerment of the modern era, for all the social media access and marketing teams, this was the moment the NFL remembered something crucial. You can have a brand, but you better back it up with integrity. Gabriel tried to shortcut the system, and instead, he torched every ounce of goodwill he had left. And here's where it gets even more damning. Shedeur never said a single word. While his name was dragged through gossip and shady blog posts, he stayed silent, focused, locked in. He let his play speak, and his silence roared. That kind of composure, that's leadership, and the players around him felt it. The locker room turned in his favor. The coaches doubled down. The fans rallied. It didn't just validate Shedeur as a quarterback. It elevated him. He became the anti-Gabriel, the guy who didn't need a narrative to prove his worth. And now, he's the face of the franchise. Not just because he throws a pretty deep ball, but because he knows how to carry a locker room through chaos. Gabriel? He landed in Carolina with no buzz, no press push, and no promises. From potential starter to depth chart footnote in 2 weeks flat, his name is now a warning label. And the ripple effect? Oh, it's everywhere. Front offices are cracking down on off-the-record media access. Coaches are reevaluating how they vet character, not just talent. Players are being warned. If you try this, we will not protect you. Agents are being told, in no uncertain terms, to reel in the narrative machines. Stephen Yes' rant wasn't just a takedown. It was a line in the sand. And when the NFL draws a line in the sand, they dare you to cross it again. So where does this leave us? With a new understanding of what it really takes to lead a team. Because this wasn't about touchdowns. This wasn't about arm strength. This wasn't even about wins. This was about trust. And when Shedeur Sanders walked through a media firestorm without flinching, he earned that trust from his coaches, from his teammates, from the fans. Gabriel? He burned it, lit the match himself. And now, he's a cautionary tale in a league that never forgets. So let's talk. Do you think Stephen A. was justified in going nuclear? Was Gabriel just poorly advised? Or is this who he really is under pressure? And what does this mean for the future of young quarterbacks in the NFL, where the media is now just as important as the playbook? Drop your takes in the comments. No burner counts, please. And if you want more jaw-dropping stories like this, media meltdowns, locker room power shifts, and reputations built or broken in real time, hit that subscribe button. Because in today's NFL, the biggest plays don't always happen on the field. Sometimes they happen with a microphone and a message. This wasn't about football. This was about power. And what happens when someone tries to steal it, lie about it, and then gets dragged into the center of the media universe for everyone to watch the fallout in real time? Because by the time Stephen A. was done scorching Dillon Gabriel on national television, the fallout wasn't just hitting Gabriel's career. It was echoing across the NFL like a warning shot. Let's start with what makes this whole thing so personal. Quarterback battles are nothing new. We've seen camps get chippy. We've seen a few cryptic tweets. Even the occasion of my agent said what moment. But this was orchestrated sabotage. Gabriel didn't just want his shot. He wanted Shedeur Sanders out of the picture. And he was willing to go behind the curtain to do it. Anonymous sources, fake stats, leaked narratives, a subtle campaign to cast doubt, shake confidence, and tilt the conversation in his favor. It was calculated. It was shameless. And it almost worked. The media started biting. Articles with no real attribution. Random insiders whispering that maybe Shedeur didn't have the locker room. Talking heads on morning radio asking if Gabriel deserved a chance. But Gabriel and his team made one critical misstep. They underestimated Shedeur's silence. Because silence, when used correctly, isn't weakness. It's control. While Gabriel was pushing narratives and manipulating headlines, Shedeur didn't say a word. No tweet. No interview. No cryptic Instagram story. Nothing. He just kept showing up to practice. Kept running drills. Kept commanding the huddle. And that silence, that composure, it spoke louder than any smear campaign ever could. Because the locker room saw it. The coaches saw it. And then the media saw it. And that's when Stephen A. Smith stepped in. He didn't just call it out. He exploded it. Live on air. Prime time. No filter. He broke it down piece by piece. This is about character. It's about ethics. And what Dillon Gabriel did, that was a hit job, plain and simple. He went further. I've been covering this league for decades. I've seen busts, egos, and drama, but I've never seen a rookie try to torpedo a teammate with this level of arrogance. Stephen A. didn't just put Gabriel in his place. He buried him under a mountain of facts, emotion, and righteous outrage, and you could feel the shift. That moment wasn't just a takedown. It was a cultural reset, a loud, definitive rejection of everything Gabriel tried to stand for, because what Stephen A. said out loud, everyone else was whispering behind the scenes. Enough with the clout chasers. Enough with the players who think Twitter is a substitute for tape. Enough with the ones who want to be famous more than they want to earn it. And then the league reacted. Gabriel was gone. The Browns cut ties faster than a rookie wideout, getting ghosted after dropping a wide-open pass. One quiet trade to Carolina. No warm send-off. No thank you for your time. Just a quick roster update buried between injury reports. And now, Gabriel's in NFL exile. Not officially, no, but he's radioactive. Because what team wants to bring in a guy who tried to hijack a franchise from the inside out? He didn't just burn a bridge. He collapsed the whole damn stadium. And Shedeur? He rose. Let's be clear. Shedeur Sanders didn't just win the starting job. He won the trust of a team, a city, and a league watching it all unfold like a live soap opera. Because while Gabriel was playing chess with Twitter accounts and burner emails, Shedeur was out here playing football. And winning. Rookie mistakes? Of course. That's the deal. But he bounced back. He took hits and got up. He made reads, adjusted protections, and led drives under pressure. And he did it all with the calm presence of someone twice his age. You think that doesn't mean something to his teammates? To his coaches? To veterans who've seen quarterback after quarterback come and go like a revolving door? They know what leadership looks like. And Shedeur didn't just show it. He lived it. And suddenly, that Shedeur Sanders story, it wasn't just about stats. It was about character. And that's the real kicker here. Because Gabriel and his camp thought this was about perception, optics, brand management, image. They forgot the NFL doesn't care about your personal marketing strategy. The NFL cares about results. And Shedeur produced them, not just in yards and touchdowns, but in poise and response, in the face of adversity that wasn't even his fault. He took a media ambush and turned it into a masterclass in restraint. He let someone else start the fire, and then watched as it burned the wrong guy to the ground. Now, here's where the story goes from scandal to legacy, because this is going to be talked about for years, not just as a cautionary tale about one player's career imploding, but as a turning point in how the NFL handles its young leaders. We've entered an era where rookies arrive with more media experience than snaps, where branding consultants outnumber offensive coordinators, where perception is reality, until the moment someone finally calls it out. And that's what Stephen A. did. He didn't just critique a player. He exposed a trend. And that exposure, it had consequences. Now, front offices are doing deeper background checks, not just on what players did, but on how they move online, on who they surround themselves with, on whether they're coming into the league to build a career or a character. That's the new evaluation metric. Are you here to play the game or to game the system? Dillon Gabriel chose the latter, and he got torched for it. That's what this really was. A scheme, an orchestrated attempt to pull the rug out from under a teammate who was doing everything right. Shedeur wasn't the press. He wasn't politicking. He wasn't floating quotes to the beat writers. He was just doing the job. And that, ironically, is what made him a threat. Gabriel didn't lose the job on talent alone. He lost it because he tried to skip the line. And in the NFL, that's suicide. The locker room doesn't forgive that. The coaches won't protect it. The veterans, who bled and sweat for their roles, will turn on you fast. Because you're not just threatening a teammate. You're threatening the entire culture. The fragile chemistry of a team that has to trust each other with their bodies, their futures, their livelihoods. When Gabriel's fingerprints started showing up on the leaks, that was it. Trust snapped. And no one was going to rebuild that bridge for him. Not after Stephen A. dragged the whole operation into the sunlight. Because the moment Stephen A. unloaded, really unloaded. It was like the last trapdoor opened. You could see it in real time. The timeline blew up. Commentators who'd been hedging suddenly took sides. Executives started distancing themselves. That rant didn't just expose Gabriel's tactics. It made it unignorable. There's a reason why it went viral. Stephen A. didn't just hit Gabriel with passion. He came with evidence. Stats, trends, tape, locker room interviews. He presented a case so airtight, Gabriel's agent probably started looking into real estate before the segment even ended. But let's be fair. It wasn't just a rant that buried Gabriel. It was Shedeur's response, or lack thereof. Because where Gabriel flailed and fumbled behind the scenes, Shedeur stayed ice cold. The Browns released a statement the next day reaffirming Shedeur as the starter, not because they wanted to make headlines, but because he earned it. He kept the locker room focused. He kept the offense humming. And most importantly, he didn't take the bait. Not once. That kind of restraint, that's leadership. And in the chaos of all the headlines, that's the one thing that every single player, coach, and analyst picked up on. Shedeur had the maturity of a 10-year vet, while the other guy was busy playing PR puppet master. And that stuck. You want to know how you become the face of a franchise? You take all the noise, all the tension, all the pressure, and you say nothing. You let your game do the talking. You walk into the building every day and prove you belong. Not by lobbying, not by leaking, not by complaining, but by delivering. And Shedeur delivered. He kept stacking practices, kept earning the huddle, kept making reads that weren't supposed to be there yet. And the Browns? They noticed. They weren't going to announce it at first. They were playing it close. But the moment Gabriel flipped the table, they had no choice but to plant the flag. And they did it with full conviction. That's what Stephen A. was really defending. Not just Shedeur's game, but his honor, his leadership, his right to grow without sabotage, his right to earn the job without someone cutting him off at the knees before week 4. It wasn't just commentary. It was a line drawn in the sand. And once that line was drawn, the league paid attention. Other teams started tightening their locker rooms. Coordinators started rethinking how they talked to their quarterbacks. Agents were told politely and firmly, don't ever try that here. The ripple effect was massive, not just because Gabriel got exposed, but because the media finally fought back against the manipulation. They didn't let it slide. They didn't play neutral. They called it what it was, character assassination disguised as competition. And what about Gabriel now? What happens to a player after this kind of fall? Nothing. That's the point. He disappears. He gets quiet. He gets buried on a depth chart, if he's lucky. Because once you're seen as a locker room threat, once you've been painted as a guy who'll tear the roof off just to get more reps, nobody wants you. Not even for practice squad. Not even for backup duty. Because that kind of chaos is contagious. And coaches don't want to spend their Sundays putting out fires. And what about Shedeur? He didn't become perfect overnight. He's still learning, still adjusting, still making the kind of rookie mistakes that come with the territory. But the way he carries himself now, it's different, stronger, more assured. The way veterans talk about him, the way the team rallies, the way he answers questions without ever giving too much. He knows now he's not just in the room. He owns it. And you can draw a straight line from that media firestorm to the moment his leadership crystallized. When Gabriel turned the spotlight into a weapon, Shedeur turned it into armor. That's not luck. That's growth. And now the blueprint's clear. Future rookies? Take notes. Because the league's watching how you handle the spotlight and how you handle being challenged in it. You don't win by out-tweeting your competition. You win by outlasting the noise. By staying locked in while someone else self-destructs try and control the headlines. Because here's the truth no one tells you. In the NFL, everyone's watching when you think no one's watching. How you practice, how you respond, how you carry yourself when things aren't going your way. Gabriel thought the media was a shortcut. Shedeur proved a long road builds legends. So let's bring it home. One player tried to play the media game and lost everything. Another kept his mouth shut. kept his head down, and rose to become a franchise QB before his rookie season even ended. Stephen A. didn't start this fire, but he sure as hell made sure we didn't ignore the smoke. Dillon Gabriel didn't just take an L. He cemented his name in NFL lore for all the wrong reasons, and no one's coming to save him. You don't get a second chance at a first impression in this league, especially not at quarterback. That position, it's sacred. It's not just about talent. It's about trust, command, accountability. It's the guy everyone looks to when the sky's falling, when the game's on the line, when the locker room's splintering. You think a team wants to hand that responsibility to someone who ran a smear campaign on his own teammate? Absolutely not. And the irony of it all? Gabriel could have had a future. Seriously, he had enough talent to stick around. Maybe not as a starter, maybe not even on the Browns, but somewhere, a clipboard job, QB3 duties, a chance to develop, learn, grow into the role. But that wasn't enough for him. He didn't want to wait his turn. So instead of building his stock, he tried to tear someone else down. And that's what the league remembers. It wasn't the arm. It wasn't the playbook knowledge. It was the desperation, the need to be relevant, even if it meant poisoning the well. Meanwhile, Shedeur didn't just walk through fire. He built a house in it. The media storm didn't shake him. It shaped him. Every headline, every whisper, every fake stat floating around, he let it pass. Not a single quote, not a single tweet. And that's why he won the locker room. Because NFL players can smell inauthenticity like smoke in the air. They know when someone's real, and they know when someone's playing the game behind the game. And Shedeur, he showed up every day, did the work, and never blinked. No ego, no games, just reps, respect, and results. That's why Stephen A. stood up for him. That's why the Browns made the call. That's why his jersey's flying off shelves. And Gabriel's name is already fading from the conversation. Because when the lights get brightest and the narratives start flying, the real ones stay grounded. So if you're an up-and-coming player watching all of this go down, learn the lesson. Keep your circle tight. Keep your name clean. Keep your head down and deliver. Because the second you start trying to win off the field, without proving on the field, you're not just playing a dangerous game. You're writing your own obituary before your career even starts. Think about that. And if you want more moments like this, where the truth hits harder than any linebacker, subscribe now, because this league never sleeps. And trust, it doesn't grow back.